Like, whilst I was researching this video, I played a game called Top War Battle Game that, as far as I could tell, wasn't even trying to pretend to be the game from the ad. So
Jesus.
I have no idea how companies like these get away with it. But generally, the game in the ad will be somewhere inside the app at some...
Well, the way they get away with it is because Google doesn't do any quality control for their ads. That's the reason why they get away with it, is because Google doesn't care. And that's why, like, so many people are like, everybody talks about, oh, it's like bad to, it's like unethical to like ad block. It's like, you know what, like, you're right, but like Google's also behaving unethically by just letting ads that are blatant scams be published on their platform. Like, there's like the Mr. Beast scams, the Joe Rogan like deep fake scams for supplements. Like, this stuff is really bad.
They run an ad that shows a game that looks kind of fun, so it convinces you to download the game.
Yeah.
You play this little mini game for half an hour before quickly realizing that the bulk of the game is not really what you signed up for. And this is where most people just uninstall the game and never think about it again. But for that tiny 2% of players, they get hooked on what the rest of the game contains, and they spend money again and again, and they single-handedly bankroll the entire company that makes the game for years to come.
And this is why games keep appealing to whales, is because their vote matters more than yours does. Because whenever you vote with $1, they vote with $1,000. That's it. And so whenever you're not voting at all, that's another factor. It's that simple. Because no court wants to continually try to prosecute false advertising games. Maybe, I mean, I don't know. I'm just saying, like, in general, right? Like, this is why these games keep happening. Developers take the tactic of fake ads to make a lower cost per install to implement it. Yeah, you could be right.
Now, if you've been on the internet for a while and have a relatively good memory, you might also remember these adverts.
Yeah.
These ones are similarly infamous for being completely fake and not representing the game at all. In fact, these ones are so infamous that they actually made an entire ad campaign that literally commented on how their ads are fake.
Guys, didn't y'all believe that all those puzzle ads were fake? And there's no such game. But today, I finally found the game. Ebony the King's Return.
Honestly, this one is...
Wait. So they're talking and complaining about fake games while they're advertising the game that people are complaining about to be fake, and it is in fact fake?
Reporting in. Scouts have found a colonizable planet.
Wow.
Civilian research.
That's impressive.
Complete. We're underway.
So bold in just like doubling down on the lie that I honestly kind of respect it. But these ads were all over the internet a few years back, just blatantly showing a game that they had no intention of actually letting you play for more than 10 minutes. But these ads were discontinued a long time ago, and they've not been running for years. And when you download Ebony, this old game is nowhere to be found, which sheds a light on another strategy these mobile game companies use to advertise their game. They use what's called A/B testing. They will create a bunch of different adverts and then roll them all out onto YouTube all at once. Then they look at the statistics to see which of these ads performed the best and which of them resulted in the most downloads for the game. Whichever of these ads that they created that does the best will be kept, and the rest will get discarded.
I really have to admire the shamelessness of it. I do. Like, they don't care about anything. All they care about is getting people to download this piece of shit and play it. It's crazy.
They then take the successful
Somebody said in chat, call center energy. You are exactly right.
ad, and they make some iterations of it, changing, you know, details here and there inside the ad. Then they roll out those ads again and measure their success. And they do this over and over again until they have the perfect ad to get as many downloads as possible for their game. And the most important part of all is that whatever minigame they decide to show in the advert is literally completely made up from scratch. And if one of the fake minigames in the ad starts to do well as an ad campaign, they then start making the minigame for their app to match the ad. Funnily enough,
man,
Civilian research
Most products
complete.
usually start, making the product first, and then they make the ad to reflect the product. But mobile game
can I be of
companies
service?
start with the ad.
Ahead
And the
slow.
moment this ad stops
do you need
working
me?
as well as it used to, the moment people start to catch on that the game they're being advertised is completely fake, the company then changes their entire ad campaign. Make a brand new ad with a brand new fake game and spread it far and wide.
So before they have time to complain about it enough, they already just flip the script and start something new. That's a pretty good idea. Yeah, so goddamn rotten it is. It's really impressive. Yes, I know. Imagine waking up every morning and being an employee for one of these companies. They really have to psych a eval for sociopathy. I mean, I think that they don't even, like, they probably don't even think about it. They're probably like, okay, so, like, we're going to do this. We're going to make these games, and whichever one people like will actually make the real game. Yeah, they're not thinking about this shit at all.
Complete.
Starting the cycle all over again. Now, whilst I was researching this video, there was one thing that I just couldn't get my head around for the longest time.
What's that?
If you're a mobile game company and you have an ad that looks like this, that is insanely popular, why not just make your entire game look like this? Like, it's clearly super popular. People
Yeah.
like it a lot, and it convinces them to download your game. And there are literally thousands of negative reviews on the App Store page talking about how mad they are about the false advertising. So if you get all this backlash from your scummy marketing strategy, why not just make the entire game be just like the
Because the people that are making the game don't speak English, and they don't even know what these things are saying.
Hold tight.
They just think, oh, it's another mad white person? Haha, we got him again. Hey, fuck him. Yeah, they don't even know. Oh, look at him. Look how mad he is. Yeah, that's probably the real reason.
popular ad
they
campaign
don't
that your
speak
team
English.
came up with.
Can't
Well,
read this.
is where we get to the saddest and most insidious part of the story.
Stupid
you see,
white devil.
whales are only half of the money-making strategy that these game companies
Mm-hmm.
employ. Because even if you get 100 million downloads on your app, even if 2 million whales rock up to your app,
That's a lot of
cash in
whales.
hand, you still have to convince those whales to spend their money in the first place. And this is where we get
Yeah.
to the nasty part. The reason Evany is a base builder, and the reason it's been a base builder,
Because you probably have to wait time for you to build the base. But if you pay money, you can skip the wait. Let's find out if I'm right about this.
for its entire lifetime is because the base builder game is created from the ground up by very intelligent people with one single goal in mind: to be as addictive and manipulative as possible in order to get you to
Reporting in. Give the order.
What a fucking surprise.
Civilian
Who could have
research
ever
complete.
imagined this?
Place your big
feel
ship
pressured
carrier.
into spending your money. And once you've
Yep.
started spending your money, it's designed to keep you spending it over and over
Absolutely.
again. Whales aren't just whales because they're stupid and have too much money on their hands. They're whales because they are unfortunately addicted to a game that they are willing to waste tens of thousands of dollars on. And this little
I think that there is a component of whales where it's actually not a mental disorder. They just
A new colony has been found.
like spending money on the game because they're bad with money. They're just stupid. Yeah, they're flexers. Exactly. Yeah, they're flexing. That's what matters to them. They like anime titties. Yeah, exactly. It's not a mental disorder. It's not a mental health crisis. It's just these guys like spending money on the game and bragging about it because they think it's cool.
minigame of enemies running down the lanes at you just
Yeah.
isn't good at making whales spend their money. It's very good at convincing people to download a game. It's fantastic marketing, but the downside of this minigame is that it's hard to monetize, whereas
Yeah.
a base builder or an anime RPG is incredibly easy.
Is this like AFK Journey? I remember everybody was getting sponsored to play this game. Everybody got sponsored to play this game except for me. I think I was the only person on Twitch that did not get sponsored to play this game. Is it Fate Grand Order? Yeah, well, they all look the same, and it's all basically the same shit, right? I mean, let's be honest.
monetize, and they use all of the nastiest little tricks in the book that you can possibly think of to manipulate people into spending their money. They slow your progression through the game to a crawl and then offer you the ability to buy your progression back. They intentionally don't make their games too skill-based so that you'll be more willing to just buy chances to win. They offer
Well,
you
the reason why is because that's actually not the reason why. It's that if somebody spends $10,000 in a video game and they lose to somebody who plays it for free, do you know what that whale thinks? Maybe I might be a fucking idiot. Wait,
Civilian structure complete.
am I stupid? Wait a minute. And whenever the person who you're trying to get to spend a large amount of money on something they shouldn't be
Where
spending
do
money
you need
on,
me?
the last thing you want them to do is to think. Thinking is the death of a sale. So don't let them think.
Limited time deals to make you feel pressured into spending money literally right now, or else the
Yeah.
deal goes away. They make desirable characters, skins, or items impossible to directly buy and make it so that
Yep.
the only way to access them is through loot box mechanics that are completely random. In fact, there's this really scary, disgusting video.
Man, dude, this is going to live in infamy for like the next 10 years.
On the internet called Let's Go
Classic.
Whaling, where
Yep.
this guy, this evil, dirty fucking bastard of a man, goes on a massive 20-minute talk about just how he monetizes a mobile game. And it is
I don't like the people that are false advertising, but at the same time, like if you're getting addicted to fake Grand Order and spending $70,000 on it, I'm really not going to blame a lot of other people besides you on that. I mean, like you're doing that to yourself. You're like if like you're hitting yourself. What are you doing? Like at a certain point, like he's not evil. Yeah, you practice him exactly. Yeah. Like what's really going on here? Like why are we getting mad at this guy for making a game that's like addictive rather than the person who's like spending a bunch of money on a game? Like this is insane. Like, at what point is this person not accountable for their own behavior? Why does it matter if the consumer doesn't regret spending the money? Because I think that most consumers do regret spending the money.
Civilian structure
And I think
complete.
that regret sets in. It's like post-nut clarity, where it's like you're not thinking about it being a bad thing at the time, but then after you finish playing the game and you look at it again, you think this is the most disgusting thing I've ever seen. Get it off my screen right now. That's the reason why.
genuinely like staring in the face of Satan himself. I won't go over the entire video here, I'll just link it in the description for you to watch the whole thing, and I really do recommend you watch it because he goes over every dirty little trick in the business that mobile game companies use to pathologize spending money. And after you've finished watching that video, and after this guy has made you really, really angry, just think that there are dozens of people just
that
like
are watching this and taking notes. You've got to keep in mind that this guy wasn't giving a presentation to nobody. There are people that are in the audience that are like,
Civilian structure complete.
they're thinking about it, man. That's
Civilian
what's
research
happening.
complete.
It's not like this is one dude.
this guy that work at the biggest and most
Civilian
profitable
Bobby,
gaming
yeah,
companies
Bobby
in the
front row
world,
seat,
and
exactly.
they spend every moment of their working lives
Mining
trying to
upgrade
weasel
complete.
their way
Yep.
into your mind
Cop.
and into your wallet.
Of
So
course.
that is why the mobile game company can't just make their entire game look like the ad, because the game in the ad looks much more fun to play, but it's much worse at slyly convincing people to part with their hard-earned cash. And you might
Yep.
be sat at home thinking to yourself, well, I would never be dumb enough to fall for this stuff. I have never spent a penny on a mobile game in my life. And that's just
You're still a plankton. And if you play these games, you are contributing to the ecosystem that keeps the whales alive.
A
Yep.
new
If
colony
you're
has been
playing the
founded.
game, if you're free to play, you are still playing.
a thing. Because you're probably right. You probably wouldn't fall for this stuff. But
Yeah.
there are people out there that do. And they fall for it really hard. And as much as you might not want to admit it, those people are just like you and me. They're not dumber than you.
Sound plan.
I think they are. I'll say it. I think they are
Mining
dumber.
upgrade
Now, they
complete.
might not be dumber than you about everything, but they sure are about this. Abso-fucking-lutely. It's not even a question.
They're not necessarily less able to see it for what it is than you are. They're just more prone to falling into these addiction traps than you are. They are being manipulated in one way or another by a bunch of people in suits, just like this fuck.
I will say I disagree with this outlook to a degree. And the reason why is because all advertising is designed in order to get you to do something that you would otherwise not do. That's why advertising is there. It's to create awareness of something or to make it compelling. And this is the same as a YouTube title or a YouTube thumbnail. It's the same as having attractive people wearing clothes for a different brand. This is the same for everything. And that's just the way it is. I think at a certain point, a person has to take accountability for their own behavior. And if you know what you're getting into and you're spending your money on it, then you're accountable for that behavior. You do understand addiction is no different than alcohol addiction, right? Yeah, I do. And so if you want to avoid alcohol addiction, don't drink alcohol. It's actually really simple. Just don't drink alcohol. That's it. I understand that there's going to be some people that are going to go and be like, oh, it's not that simple. It actually really is. It's the same as if you want to lose weight, eat better, and start working out. It's hard to do. You might think it's challenging or it's painful, but that's what the solution is. If you don't want to get addicted to these games, then don't play these games. Don't play games. Yes, don't play the games that you think are addictive. Yes, absolutely. Privileged shit. Oh, there's no justification. What's your justification? I'm addicted to alcohol? Who decided for you to be addicted to alcohol? You did whenever you started drinking. Everybody knows the risks to this. It's not like people, you think people don't know about alcoholism? People don't know about being an alcoholic? What are we talking about? Like, what is this? Stop it. Depression? Oh, so you're depressed so you can just do something that damages your life and it's not your fault anymore? That doesn't make any sense.
Yes, sir.
That makes no sense.
Attack.
It's still your fault. Same as drugs, gambling, and collecting items. Yeah, exactly. That's kind of a bad comparison. Alcohol is like inherently bad, like a video game is supposed to be just fun. That's not true. I don't think alcohol is like inherently bad in small amounts, and I think that for the people that think alcohol is inherently bad, probably also think a lot of them think video games are inherently bad. People think that it's just a matter of perspective. Dumb take? No, it's not. It's not at all.
Brace for combat.
If you don't want to get addicted to something, don't do it. Problem solved. People have zero accountability. Yeah, they want, oh, it's depression, it's the advertising. Get the fuck out of here.
Civilian structure
Take some accountability for your own life. Quit blaming the world, because you can't control yourself.
Who spend their lives abusing quirks of human psychology to make themselves insanely rich at the expense of everyday people just like you. So if you're ever watching YouTube and you see a mobile game ad that looks appealing to you, please, for the love of God, don't click on it.
That's right.
Because clicking on it is exactly what they want you to do. Thanks for
That's
watching.
a fact. That's fact. True, true, true. Absolutely. It doesn't apply once you're addicted or born with the addiction. You're right. If you're born with an addiction to something, it's different. But I don't think that's what most people are. So, here's the thing. I'll talk about that after. Like, I'll link you this video. This is, I actually have never heard this outlook. I didn't know about this as much as he explained it. This is a good video. I really like this a lot. Born with addiction? Yeah. So, like, some kids are, like, born addicted to crack because their moms are crack whores. Like, that's what he's talking about. That's a legit thing. It happens. Or heroin. Yeah, it's just the way it is. How would you even know whenever most people, there are 7 billion people in the world? Well, because it's the same solution. It's like, I don't know all 7 billion people in the world, but I know if you cut your arm off, it won't grow back. Like, there are some things you don't need to test this with every single person in order to know it's obvious.
Additional credits required. Civilian structure complete.
I want to say, guys, that this is the Matrix, okay? If we watch this video, you will never be able to see video games the same ever again.
How can I be of service?
You'll never be able to see them the same. Reality will be changed for you and altered. Here we go.
5 milliseconds at 1080p on a 13 teraflop machine for cloud shading only half the frame surface area. For my layman viewers, there's a massive FPS difference when clouds are disabled inside the overhyped, under-criticized, and supposedly faster Unreal 5.5. This basic effect is now running over 800% slower than it was in Unreal Engine 5.4. and still relies on temporal smear abuse to hide jittering. This isn't some,
It
oh,
is.
it's just going to be patched out scenario. I told Epic Games during the preview phase of 5.5 about this issue so that they could fix it before they released the production-ready version of 5.5. No one is talking about issues like this. And if I can show you something this broken in 30 seconds, imagine what I'll show you in the rest of this video.
Oh
In this
boy.
video, I'm going to set some new standards for both gamers and non-graphic developers on what 9th generation hardware can and should be delivering.
Okay.
First, I'll break down a logical approach to modern frame budgets to maximize the
Sure.
under-discussed limitations of modern consoles.
Mining
Then we'll
upgrade
explore the declining quality and indirect lighting
Yes, because consoles are PCs for cavemen. Yeah, exactly.
solutions
This
and
True.
disprove the ridiculous arguments made in defense of the performance and quality regression seen in modern titles. Before diving into the technical breakdowns, it's very important to clarify the scenario that drives the studio's technological focus.
Yeah.
We are developing a fast-paced, realistic third-person action title. The gameplay alternates between outdoor and indoor environments,
Sure.
with roughly 75% of the scene composed of static objects.
Right.
The remaining 25% consists of dynamic elements, including characters, breakable objects, vehicles, moving light occluders, such as doors and windows, and finally, moving and toggleable light sources.
Okay.
It's very important for viewers to note that the conditions mirror the scenarios found in hundreds of games,
Sure. Yeah,
including
that's
many
accurate.
produced on 9th Gen. This means the improvements and systems we advocate for, and with your support we may eventually produce, can benefit hundreds of third-party productions in terms of quality and performance. The target hardware for this studio, and what the industry should prioritize as well, is going to be the PS5 and Series X consoles because of their well-established enhancements over their base-gen and mid-gen predecessors.
Sure.
The plan we promote today accounts for the limitations between these machines, such as the lower theoretical teraflop power of the base PS5 and the Series X 2 times slower SSD speed. This allows for extra benefits when performance and image quality goals have been met universally between the two. So if you're out there with your 4070 talking about how great the features we criticize run on your hardware, you are incredibly irrelevant to the
Civilian structure complete.
That's what I fucking did. Oh, jeez.
Where do
Yeah,
you
because for me, I haven't had. Yeah, I have a 4090,
Our
right?
planet is under
You're
siege.
relevant? No, but he's right. He's absolutely right. You shouldn't judge the quality on something using the
Wanna
highest
go with
model.
your fancy
Absolutely
words
not.
and your
It's a bad
coin.
frame of reference.
You've
No,
made
he's right
your
about it.
fine purchase.
this conversation because you
Why
are
is the
in
kid
fact
so hostile? Let me explain.
Where do you need me?
When you know a
Head
lot
slow.
about a topic
Commerce upgrade
and you
complete.
think that nobody is listening to you, and it's so fucking
Civilian
obvious,
research tier complete.
it's really fucking annoying. That's the reason why.
way beyond target spec. The Series S remains as a destructive outlier due to completely botching the established hardware improvements from its mid-gen predecessor. And for this reason, we cannot scrutinize the butchered image quality or extreme upscaling we've seen on this console.
I mean, this looks like shit, right? I mean, what the fuck is this? Like, this is like from PlayStation 3. This is awful.
Civilian research complete.
Since there doesn't seem to be enforced image quality
Yeah, look at
standards, we believe the Series S should not dictate or limit the progress of visual standards for the truly hardware-enhanced machines.
Where do you
Now,
need me?
let's
Okay.
discuss the appropriate target resolution and frame rate, because I find the performance or resolution mode trend to be a very poor approach to modern hardware utilization.
Thank
Prepare
you.
for
I think the
phase
entire idea that like you can only play it with like performance or like what do you call it? Like optimization, like visuals. It's so stupid.
Consider the PS5 and PS4. On PS4,
It's like you either
most
want the
base
game to
generation
look
visuals
bad or
ran at
play bad.
1080p, 30 FPS on a 1.9
What a
teraflop
great
system.
choice.
To double the frame rate, twice the amount of power is needed, which fits comfortably in the PS5 hardware budget, leaving large headroom for the much-needed 9th
Cooked
generation
graphics,
visual
yeah.
improvements. But resolution is a far more demanding challenge. Moving from 1080p to 4K requires 4 times the computational power, which consumes over half the available hardware resources.
Maybe I'm just talking out of my ass, but I think that people don't really give a fuck about 4K. I think that the difference between 720 to 480 is like 5x more than from 1080. Or sorry, yeah, from 1080 to 4K. Like 4K is nice, but most people that are playing PC games, especially, they're playing them on monitors that are less than 30 inches. I would say in most cases. So like, what are you really doing with a 4K monitor resolution like that? Yeah, 1440. Yeah, for me, that's where I'm at. Is I have 1440 as well.
Exotic resources have been located
Just to
by our
maintain
survey
And I think
the
that's
flawed appearance
and really it's just so much better.
by our survey teams.
And like going from that to 4K is like so minimal, it's not worth it.
and limited complexity
Unless you're
of
like an
8th generation
aficionado, right?
console visuals.
You really care about
and
it.
again at only 30 FPS, which does not
Enthusiast.
promote defined substantial improvement. But this compromise is completely unnecessary when you take into a whole new perspective on the situation. 60 FPS establishes
What is this, bro? Like, what year is it? What year is this? Like, what the fuck is going on?
Mining upgrade complete.
How do console players keep eating shit?
I am listening, my friend.
clear improvement from last gen without running up the hardware budget.
Yeah.
But what about resolution? From a financial perspective and a higher win ratio for consumers, we need to focus on the 4K and 1080p market. Instead of raising the resolution, which multiplies the cost of 60 FPS outside of hardware capabilities, and tightly constrains the budget of enhanced visual techniques, industry should focus on raising image quality via better anti-aliasing. This isn't a super original stance, but I'm going to bring a lot more context to the argument. I'm also saying we don't need AI or hardware upgrades to achieve this. Many 9th gen titles are being rendered below 1080p, so sticking to this resolution already logically improves quality here. 4K TVs can rely on integer
I think
scaling
this is what some of the mods do as well.
From a 1080p output in the worst case scenario. But 4K upscaling from 1080p could be a lot more simple and in turn a lot cleaner than the current approaches. But it's a big topic for an upcoming video.
Okay.
Now let's dive into global illumination. And we're taking a much closer look into the subject than the most popular video covering the topic. First, let's discuss why light maps are not viable for our use case. First, there's developer resistance. There's the time-consuming baking processes, which doesn't mix well with modern development culture that caters to lazier and cheaper developments.
Says it's not good because people are lazy and they won't use it.
You failed to place a bid.
Well,
Give the order.
I guess that's one way to say it.
We refer to this as checkmark culture.
Yeah.
Many developers have also established light maps in large open worlds face significant memory challenges. Lastly, light maps don't mix well with destructible light sources or dynamic fluids. But so many people push this idea that the only alternative to light maps is bland ambient lighting with maybe some DFAO, or a super dynamic expensive GI method, when many 8th generation titles shipped with alternative solutions much more lightweight and in some ways higher quality.
Yeah, see, that's the thing, right? I mean, like, if you look at the quality here and you look at the quality there, yes, this is better, but I feel like you're looking at something that's like 85% versus like 100%.
I'll do my best. What now?
I do feel like graphics have kind of peaked.
Reporting in.
Than what use case titles are using today. Before
On
I
a
go any further,
yeah,
I want to discuss the
970.
inevitable comments on the highly unrelated issue where dynamic objects pop out from their baked environments.
Oh, yeah.
This poor-looking phenomenon is usually implemented on purpose, usually in competitive games where player sight or perspective advantages are unwanted by the developers.
Yeah, of course. It's
But the
annoying.
systems I mentioned today should not introduce this effect, since both static and dynamic objects should be shaded in the same pass. Quantum Break, MGSV, and I'm pretty sure Detroit Human all utilize pro-based lighting, in combination with screen space GI-AO and or combined with an ambient lighting fallback. Unity has a pro-based lighting only system as well, that even records or really pre-computes the visibility of moving skylights. But a lot of people will argue against these volumetric based approaches with concerns about leaking or wall thickness limitations. This sets the conversation for 3 different topics. Most
I
people
think that what happens is that I feel like the reason why a lot of this happens is just because developers, and this is probably why a lot of developers are moving towards Unreal. I feel like in the last, like, well, I mean, we got 2 big examples, right? We have CD Projekt Red, and we also have Halo, right? And so 343 Studios, 2 massive, insanely big IPs that are moving over to Unreal Engine, and those are just the ones that I'm thinking of right off the top of my head. I think that the reason why is because it standardizes everything, but the problem is that I think when everything becomes standardized, games don't have that, like, unique appeal. And I don't know how I can explain it, but it's like the DNA of certain games just feels different. And I do feel like with every game being made in Unreal 5, that will be lost. I don't, yeah, Atlas is also moving to Unreal Engine. I didn't know that.
All hands
Gameplay isn't tied to
prepare for
engines?
phase jump.
I don't think it's necessarily tied to engines, but in a lot of cases it is, because the developers probably don't innovate separately from like just what the engine provides naturally.
Commerce
And it
upgrade
partially is,
complete.
yeah.
Planet item complete.
Only familiar with overly simple ambient occlusion implementations that cause halo artifacts around objects like
Secure
characters.
the passengers.
This has long been an issue with
How can I
UE4
be
and to
of
this
service?
day even
A
UE5's
sound
SSAO.
plan.
But you can go back
Yeah.
almost
We're
9 years
underway.
ago to MGSV, where its SSAO originally suffers from the same problems, but allows
This game came out 9 years ago?
Our fleet is under attack. A sound plan.
What the fuck
A
happened?
new colony has been founded.
What happened? Like,
for driver-forced HBO+. A closed source technique, but often butchered, largely solves this halo problem at a dirt cheap price.
yeah.
Another issue you'll find with most AO is their lack of lighting awareness. For instance, anything in direct light should not have AO applied if you compare to path tracing. This can be implemented as seen with this open source mobile compatible GTAO.
Okay.
Another issue with a lot of AO solutions is noise. And we've seen plenty of non-TAA reliant examples,
I
but
think I
wanna
saw that in Once Human before. Yeah, have you guys seen that in games? Let me see if I can pull it up, because yeah, I've seen it before myself. It's in Stalker 2. Really? Yeah, like
non-TAA
that right there. Holy shit.
Our planet is under
Tarkov
siege.
has a switch for it. What the
non-TAA reliant examples, but I want to quickly mention
Dancing
MXAO,
pixels. Yeah, I guess so.
which purposely doesn't use random sampling
Reporting
patterns
in.
because those require more expensive denoisements.
Logistics upgrade
Instead, it
complete.
uses Bayer dithering because it's
sound
easier
plan.
and cheaper to smooth. Retro games also use Bayer for smoothing, but in an analog sense. In other words, taking advantage of the easy smoothing properties offered in Bayer extend outside of SSAO. I could cover a lot more regarding the AO situation, but I'll go ahead and move on with a memory concern on probes.
Okay.
A smarter approach for this issue is to bake probe density near static surfaces
Civilian
while
structure
keeping it more
complete.
sparse in open
Where
areas.
do you need me?
Maybe introducing newer probes around dynamic objects.
Keep me
Leak prevention has been discussed in
purchase.
Detroit Human documents, and my personal favorite is from a GI SIGGRAPH presentation from 2021, using a
Civilian
low-resolution
research
depth
complete.
map function. Now that I've covered these popular graphic concerns, you're now ready for my
Civilian
addressment of the
structure
pros and
complete.
cons of the
should
technologies
be a
saturating
routine
modern graphic
combat mission.
conversations. Then
Our
I'll
fleet
discuss
is
some of the
under
forgotten
attack.
gems of GI
Ahead
rendering to
slow.
enrich consumer
This should
knowledge
be a
of
routine
existing graphic
combat
techniques
mission.
and revive
Okay.
consumer awareness on
This'll
optimized
only take a
performance
minute.
in this modern
This
age
should
of
be a
hardware
routine
abuse.
combat
Now let's
mission.
talk about
See, like, that's the
Just a
thing is, like,
short
I don't even
detour while
know,
we
like,
clear the
I've
path.
seen some of these
Civilian
examples
structure
myself,
complete.
but, like, I've never really had it explained.
DDGI,
Civilian
which
structure
ray traces
complete.
the environment's lighting in
This should
sparse
be a
amounts that
routine
end up being
combat
encoded
mission.
into irradiant
Yeah.
films
This should be a
that light the
routine
environment with
combat
zero
mission.
noise.
Reporting in.
It approaches
A
leaking via
sound
adaptive
plan.
probe
We're
relocation.
underway.
DDGI can't provide ambient occlusion though. To see what I mean, take a look at the path trace reference, then DDGI with conservative radius RTAO, and then DDGI with the UE4's SAO. And like I said,
Okay.
we need better SSAO, but material AO is an important piece of the look that should be pre-computed for consumers,
Yeah.
which is why it's so important to fix the baked material AO workflows inside Unreal, since they're far from being a
Commerce
checkmark
upgrade
workflow.
complete.
But DGI
Civilian
also lacks
research
indirect
complete.
shadows present in path
A new
tracing,
colony
spogging,
has been
lumen, and
founded.
even baked lighting inside
Reporting
Unreal,
in.
provided via
We're
distance fields.
underway.
A very cheap and great looking effect
Civilian
for
structure
non-skeletal
complete.
meshes. It's just that distance fields have to reside in VRAM. And although seemingly small to store,
Military
Unreal does a
research
very
tier
bad job at
complete.
optimizing the resolution on a
Exotic
per object
resources have been
basis.
located by
The
our
last
survey
thing
team.
DDGI lacks is rough specular or radiance. You can see this difference in path tracing in Lumen versus DDGI. But this might just call instead
sure.
for small scale specular representation.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I can really see a huge difference there or not. Yeah, specular reflection? Yeah.
As seen with Quantum Break, or probably a better example would be the Order's 1886
Reporting
use
in.
of spherical Gaussians to get that very important directionality appearance
Wait,
of the
so this came out in 2015? Something happened. Bro, in like 10 years, are we gonna be back to making like Super Nintendo games and like nobody knows how to make Elden Ring anymore? Like, yeah, no, you can't make a 3D game. Like, are we gonna just keep going backwards? This is nuts.
The lighting.
It's
Now
a
that I've
regression,
defined
yeah.
LumenGI's superior aspects over DDGI, now it's time to go over its major issues such as the cost, which can usually hang around 3.8 milliseconds in a large sitting environment on a desktop 3060. And remember, this is only the cost for LumenGI, since Lumen Reflections introduced their own separate cost for any material below a certain roughness value.
Yeah.
I'm giving LumenGI the best possible timing here since I slowed down its update rates significantly from its default configurations in combination with using its faster software ray tracing version.
Yeah, sure.
But despite being on its 5th iteration, none of the major issues everyone is talking about has been fixed, such as the disocclusion errors, the splotchy inconsistencies.
See, you look at that, bro. Like, look at this.
Has been fixed, such as the disocclusion.
That's weird.
Planet item complete.
How does this happen?
Sound plan. I am listening, my friend.
Holy shit.
Read on now, yes?
Disocclusion errors, the splotchy
Where do you need
inconsistencies,
Yeah.
noise,
Underway.
and smearing,
Mining
which is
upgrade
especially
complete.
bad when you have a character with a camera-based turn animation where light can smear on the character's face. A scenario
How can I be of
conveniently not
service?
replicatable in
Hold
Fortnite.
steady. We're going in.
Lumen's normal base
Brace for
temporal
combat.
rejection either scales on the
Force
ineffective
left to
side
next conquest.
or refuses to
Regal
account for
now,
basic
yes?
two-position
Target
subpixel jitter.
acquired.
And the
Firing
importance of that
now.
issue will eventually be covered in our
Firing
anti-aliasing
Yeah.
technology video. It's now time to present some very optimized and criminally under-discussed indirect lighting techniques so we can continue getting the record straight. MGSV interpolates multiple sets of spherical harmonics containing times of day, weather cycles, and lighting scenarios.
Sure, yeah,
To
a
save
lot of games
cost,
had that.
It shades diffuse indirect lighting on a texture half the size of the main resolution. Then, bilaterally upscales it by comparing the half-resolution depth texture with a full-resolution depth texture.
I don't understand. Like, did it just get worse because of like people trying to save money?
Failed to place a bid.
Because that's incredible.
So that all geometric lines
Yes.
are evenly and efficiently lit. But let's get more advanced though. The Division is another similar scenario with a mostly static environment with dynamic lights. The GI approach in the Division uses probes that store cube maps
Yeah.
of the normal and albedo scene. The
They got
probes' visibility
lazy?
to each other is pre-computed and listed in memory. And of course some other complex concepts are applied, but we end up with a solution that creates bounce light per frame as lights are casted on objects. Short-term, non-screen space bound GI in an open world, all done on base 8th gen consoles. This is so much more impressive than the splotchy mess we have with Lumen in large-scale scenes. Let's talk about another lighting approach seen on PS4, such as shadow map occlusion tracing in Ghost of Tsushima. The devs
Yeah,
used
that game looked
Where do you
really
need
good.
me?
So is it just people that don't
can
know
I
how to
be of
use the
service?
tools and they just get lazy? Is that what happened?
Reporting in.
Buffer cube
Like-
map similar to the Division, and then trace the
This'll only
sunlight's
take a
shadow
minute.
map to prevent
Average
speculative
gamer will
glare
not
on
notice this
interiors.
shit. So this is the way I think average gamers see it. The games that have this, it creates a value and an
can I be of
improvement
service?
that is hard for people to really understand. But like they will notice it, but they won't notice that they notice it. Does that make sense? The game will just look better.
This technique is apparently a little
I
crude,
think.
but I've never seen this exploited for a global illumination technique in terms of occlusion, etc. And it's something we need to start considering when we erase shadow maps with ray trace shadows that don't provide that depth information. Now our last mention for GI is going to be Radiance Cascades, which is not an 8th gen technique, but it was designed under a scenario where abusable and competent TAA could not be used, and the graphics programmer behind it wasn't a fan of the undocumented slow resolve timings not found in dynamic GI papers. Now, Radiance Cascades comes from the screen space GI that introduces a optimized ray sampling method, where a fixed cost I've heard is possibly maintainable.
Yeah.
Basically, you have a dense layer of probe
looks good.
sampling a few directions in a very limited range. Then, another layer of probes, less dense than before, sample further information at a higher directional capacity.
I wonder if this is going to keep getting worse. I feel like it probably will. I think so, yeah. This is a technique that PoE2 uses? Maybe. Most people don't care.
Commerce upgrade complete.
I think that people do care about a game looking
listening,
good.
my friend.
more layers or cascades.
So, like, to the extent
continue
that it makes the
pattern.
game look bad,
It's a
they will
concept
care.
that optimizes the spatial relevance of rays so that each layer can be interpolated for a coherent enough representation to generate realistic bounce light.
Especially
and
when
shadowing.
every game is
You'll usually
using the
find
same
this technique done
model.
in 2D, but there's already moving development in the 3D space, and now recently a very fast non-screen space implementation just saw the light of day. When you look at these techniques from a broader perspective, I really hope viewers can see the potential each technique brings for a specific problem.
Yeah.
I want to see more exploration in these approaches from graphic engineers, especially in Unreal.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, what he's really complaining about is that instead of developing their own lighting solutions that are intrinsic to that game and made for that game, they just use the default lighting solutions that Unreal has, and there's a lot of software and like hardware costs that creates. Okay. Yeah, I just, you know, I mean, as I said, I understand about like probably 30% of this, maybe 40, but probably not even half.
You have an industry standard engine that is founded on temporal smear abuse and sustained by Fortnite, a game where expensive dynamic GI is actually justified because the environment is not static, but completely dynamic. We get games like Stalker 2 where the environment is static, but ends up performing and looking worse than it should in consumer hands.
Really? Is this true? I never ran into this, but I have a 4090. Is this true?
Fortunately, these legitimate problems will not be fixed or focused on by mainstream industry because there is no market incentive. Despite what I and many others consider peak abuse in performance and image quality standards, standout games will continue to thrive regardless as long as the majority of consumers excuse modern issues due to not knowing what's
I don't think that people notice it. And the issue with the lighting is like the other video with the like anti-aliasing and seeing how people kind of like ghost around in frames. I think that that's much easier for a person to understand because it's just easier to understand than lighting, right? Because lighting has like a degree of logic behind the understanding. Whereas just being able to see a character moving and looking weird doesn't really take a lot. So yeah. Watch the newest video about the industry bullying him? Wait, what?
possible in graphics optimization or simply having zero hope in future improvement. Threat Interactive is that hope. And your subscription to the channel is pivotal in the success of our mission. So if you haven't, subscribe right now if you care about modern image quality and basic performance standards, because that will push our content to the majority of consumers. This is your opportunity to establish a market that is being taken advantage of and validated and ignored. And if it interests you, binge our information-packed content, starting with our first video on fake optimization.
I think that the reason why a lot of people don't like this guy is because people like this guy from the perspective of people that are like lazy. I think in a lot of cases, people like him are inhibitors, where they think that, well, we don't want to do everything that he wants because it lowers the quality or it costs more time or money. But the reality is that I think that with anybody who's like, have you guys ever been in a class, like this is probably true in like high school or like maybe college, where like there were people in the class that were like hyper invested and hyper fixated on it. And when things weren't going the way that they were supposed to be going, that person got really upset or annoyed about it, right? And like we had the nerd. Yeah, well, I mean, like that's like one way to say it. But yeah, he has no chill. I love it. Exactly, right? And so whenever I look at this guy, I see somebody who's like really opinionated and extremely in like what would I really call it? There's the video. Give it a like. I completely support these guys, by the way. I think that they're fighting a good fight. And they're very invested, and like his goal is to make the experience better for the user. And I think that the perceived hostility is coming from the frustration that of the idea that like other people don't want to do the same thing, right? They want to innovate, they want to improve it, right? Hyperfixation, exactly. It's passionate, right? So yeah, that's the way that I see it the most, right? And what is this? People don't know how Unreal 5 engine works? Yeah, I don't really know. He's the guy who actually reads his textbooks. Yeah, exactly, right? There's a few studios that have created their own engine where games look truly decent with older hardware. Take Sekiro. Yeah, I think that's true too. There's definitely a lot of other studios that do it. But I do think that like his point about them just using the default solutions rather than building them themselves, like for like bespoke games, I think that's obviously like, I mean, you can clearly see why it's a problem, and you can also clearly see why people don't want to, why people think it's bad. Unreal 5 is killing games? What?
This is an investigative report addressing the most negative aspects affecting modern game development, specifically the deterioration of realistic graphics and the manufactured increase in computing cost. I am Kevin Jimenez, the founder of Threat Interactive, a new game production studio aiming to unlock the full potential this next generation of gaming can provide. And we'll show just how by the end of this video.
Okay.
There are three interconnected factors that need to be addressed: creativity, performance, and visuals. Let's begin with creativity. Several videos online are already bringing awareness to the decreasing quality of gameplay, open worlds, and the microtransactions affecting the majority of games.
The two biggest video game makers in America now make most of their money not from people buying games, but on subscriptions and spending within those games.
Yeah.
In fact, Electronic
That's why
Arts
every game does it.
and Take-Two Interactive both make a staggering 75% of their money from what's called microtransactions.
Jesus.
However, I
75%?
personally loathe the popular critique that photorealistic games are not fun, they lack art style, and we need worse graphics to fix it.
Yeah.
This defeatist attitude is a byproduct of modern development, not visual progress. As industry game developer veterans put it, one thing you do is 10 things you don't. Currently, graphics dominate the do list, leaving gameplay and art style in the don't category.
He's completely right. I feel like visuals for games totally take precedent over gameplay. It's so weird how somehow with video games, gameplay isn't priority number one.
Graphics are currently in a chaotic state, but once the entire developer industry can easily create highly performant photorealism within their engines, competition can begin to solely focus on art direction and gameplay. But recent opportunities for outstanding games with captivating stories and incredible gameplay have been tarnished by the next two factors. 30 FPS on next-gen consoles is unacceptable for many reasons.
Because it sucks. That's the only reason it matters. Why is 30 FPS unacceptable? Because it sucks. If you look at it, it looks like it sucks. It's not even a question. It's awful.
Civilian structure complete.
It appears choppy and promotes a reliance on accessibility such as motion blur.
Yeah.
30 FPS also induces extreme judder and motion on numerous screens. With only 30 frames, the quality of gameplay logic and basic responsiveness falls short, especially when tons of other titles offer that same basic responsiveness.
That's right.
There are numerous 8th generation console titles that ran near photorealistic visuals at 60 FPS, and that was on 2013 2 teraflop hardware.
In my opinion, I feel like the expectation should be like 80 to 100 FPS, if not more. Like at this point, I don't even think 60 is enough to have like a really good, fluid, feel-good game. Yeah, like 120? Yeah, exactly.
FPS titles like Spider-Man PS4 are kind of excused here. But modern studios are churning out these half-baked games with absurd requirements.
Well, here's what the problem is, right? Like, look at this. I don't know. I thought Remnant 2 was good. But, like, slop. Okay, I guess. And, like, these two, RoboCop, I don't know about this one. And people did like Alan Wake 2, to be fair.
Reporting in.
I don't... Yeah, I thought Remnant 2 had good graphics. But so many of these games are just garbage games. And it kind of goes back to what I was saying before about how when a game is bad in one thing, in a lot of cases it means it's going to be bad in everything else too. Like, you know, Starfield, Suicide Squad, and Forspoken, these games are garbage in like 7 different ways.
Churning out these half-baked games with absurd requirements, creating an illusion that 13 teraflop 2021 architecture isn't powerful enough for basic photorealistic performance standards set years ago. This leads us to our final issue. The basic standard of 60 FPS is only offered at the cost of our next and biggest problem, visuals. I firmly advocate for photorealism, but the industry is advancing in it in a manner that is worthless during basic movement, through cancer and real-time rendering. A graphics programming scapegoat that is destroying every game in its path.
What?
It's called TAA, and that stands for Temporal Anti-Aliasing. And this includes upscalers. There are great videos trying to bring awareness about this, but Digital Foundry has an ignorant video that is quickly spreading inaccurate information that is damaging real-time rendering. I will expose false narratives as I show why TA has
I don't know anything about this.
trends in conjunction with an abusive use of the power offered in current generation consoles. TAA and upscalers stem from anti-aliasing, effects that aim to mimic the benefits.
Why is he dressed up like Ellen DeGeneres?
Civilian structure complete.
Why do that?
Defense upgrade complete.
What? Because, oh, he's Canadian. Oh. Okay, never mind.
It's a 4K plus rendering, because 4K 60 FPS on affordable hardware, including 9th generation consoles, isn't feasible. True 4K or higher rendering ensures smooth edges on objects, better sampling on textures, thin objects, and specular highlights. As you decrease the resolution, stair-stepping aliasing emerges, and thin details on meshes and specular highlighting breaks apart. FXAA addresses stair-stepping for a cheap cost, but introduces noticeable blur on the entire image.
Yeah, it just blurs everything out. Yeah.
SMAA eliminates these same edges without any blur, making it much more superior. In fact, the only advantage 4K downsample to 1080p versus 1080p with just SMAA applied is thin detail and specular sampling. But modern TAA is designed to run at any resolution by jittering the rendering view in 8 or more positions as frames.
Yeah, I noticed that. Damn, I had no idea why this happened.
Generated. After pixel reprojection logic is calculated and designed, the past frames are combined, creating an 8K-like resolution addressing thin, undersampled objects and specular highlighting.
Yeah.
But all versions of these designs have several issues. Temporal designs are destructive to object or character motion within view. The problems I'm about to show aren't usually visible under a slower threshold of motion, which is why the industry markets with slow cinematic trailers or graphical showcases. But
what the fuck? I feel like I don't even want to watch the rest of this video because it's going to make me see things that I haven't seen. I'm not seeing them right now. It's like this is like a fucking Morpheus red pill, blue pill moment that like after I watch this video, I'm going to be like, oh my God, now I see it everywhere. Yeah, wake up. All right, let's get woke.
Motion produced from gameplay gets annihilated with ghosting, blur, and smearing visuals. This is why still or slow image quality comparisons by major tech influencers are both worthless and misleading. What's the point in playing a realistic game that looks like this during basic player interactions? YouTube
Wow.
compression conveniently hides these effects of TAA and is usually mistaken for video compression artifacts. The 4K on YouTube resembles native uncompressed 1080p more than actual native uncompressed 4K.
Oh man.
Chances are you're playing games through an HDMI or better, meaning your game's image quality is uncompressed. Temporal solutions and motion degrade resolutions similar to low bitrate video compression. So having TAA on your gameplay is like adding compression to your gaming
I didn't even, so like if he's looking at it frame by frame, look at
low
this.
bitrate video compression. So having TAA on your gameplay is like adding compression to your gaming experience. Because of current hardware prices that aren't changing anytime soon, 1080p and 1440p remain the most consumer-friendly target resolutions.
Oh my, wait, oh my God, look at the difference.
Soon, 1080p and 1440p remain the most...
Jesus.
Remain the most consumer-friendly target resolutions.
What the fuck was that?
1080p and 1440p remain the most consumer-friendly target resolutions. But TAA ruins these resolutions the most.
Oh my
TAA
God.
upscalers not only ruin affordable gaming resolutions, but also damage luxury resolutions for those with enthusiast-grade graphic GPUs. TAA and upscalers are often bundled with ugly sharpeners that fail to fix ghosting or restore the original clarity and detail stripped away from smearing.
Yeah.
The FTA subreddit, up until the creation of the r/motion clarity subreddit, remained the only online community where consumers could finally speak loud against the industry's oxymoron stance on realistic graphics. And they've listed hundreds of games.
Dude, look at that sword. I love videos like this because it's like you begin the video by thinking that it's just some nerd that has like an autistic fixation on something that nobody cares about. And then you end the video,
where do you need me?
And you're like, wow. This is fucked. This is awful. Yes, I know. It's based? I know. Look at it.
And they've listed hundreds of games with forced TAA, with recent titles throwing out traditional AA options for upscaling methods only. Remember the SMAA versus 4K comparisons earlier? You could get the same sampling quality on thin and specular by reusing a single pass frame, which means long ghosting trails, blur, and smearing could be eliminated. I have personally compiled several pieces of data showing these temporal methods could be redesigned to prevent all these hideous motion issues, which are listed in the video description.
Looking for something? Defense upgrade.
But clear and good TAA will never become mainstream because the smeary nature of current temporal solutions are being exploited to cover up lazy and cheap development practices. In hundreds of game titles, if you can fully disable temporal solutions, you are punished severely with numerous rendering problems. Temporal dithering and frame blending dependent rendering aspects.
Oh, that's terrible.
Temporal dithering
Look.
and frame blending dependent rendering aspects.
Holy shit.
Bloom. Soft shadows. Denoise replacement for ray trace shadows. Ambient occlusion.
So it's just designed with all of this in
Screen
mind.
space contact shadows. Vegetation, fur, hair. Screen space reflections.
The jitter can't be
Global
turned off.
illumination.
Phase jump. Where to now?
Translucent materials.
On my way.
Oh, wow. Look at that.
Where do you need me?
Not that. Look at her glasses.
Our fleet is under attack.
This is awful.
Clouds. Dithering to hide geometric camera clipping.
No
How can I
way.
be of service? A sound plan.
No. No.
This should be a routine combat mission.
How?
Mesh introductions. And ray trace reflections. Strip away TAA in several engines and these effects transform into an incomprehensible mess or reveal a poor approach to an aspect of rendering.
So it was never actually done right in the first place because they just assumed that they'd just smooth everything over in the end? Is that accurate? This is an AI video, bro? Well, I wish they used AI to make these games. They probably would have been better.
Times of war are upon us.
The supposed fixes and optimizations offered by temporal
And
anti-aliasing
also, I don't
and
know if it is
upscalers.
or not. I mean, it's just a guy.
But an industry lie perpetuated by Digital Foundry's TAA
Yeah, look at that.
video is the claim that TAA and upscalers enable developers to optimize these effects by rendering them at lower resolutions, allowing TAA to smooth them with supposedly no cost. But if you do some digging, you'll discover older deferred titles from under a decade ago, rendering the same basic effects independently of temporal frame smearing with similar or better performance.
That's one thing I've noticed. I feel like graphics kind of peaked in like 2014 to 2017.
Military
And
research complete.
we haven't really had like a huge
We're underway.
like a
Ahead
huge
slow.
breakthrough since then.
A sound plan.
Or similar better visual quality. And guess what? If you need extra performance
I noticed
from a
that playing
demanding
Metal Gear
feature,
Rising
that
Revengeance.
feature can be programmed to run at a lower resolution and or include its own temporal accumulation without blurring the entire frame. Modern implementations of last gen's basic visuals perform more poorly because studios leverage the power of ninth generation consoles to cut financial costs on legitimate optimization processes for faster releases. The financial savings don't end there though. TAA and upscalers enable studios to save money by integrating these popular and fully developed temporal algorithms into their engines instead of investing in the development of genuinely high-performing and self-resolving effects.
Because it's more expensive.
TAA, a large portion of rendering advancement papers tie in TAA or mention an upscaler such as DLSS as a required condition to solve some issue with the design.
Oh my god.
Speaking of DLSS, people...
So... that is insane. Wake up, Neo? Yeah, this is upsetting, guys. This is really upsetting. Where the hell does it... So you're telling me that they're saving money and they're still spending... Yeah, they're saving money and they're still spending over $100 million making these games? I feel like we have a problem here.
Only label it better than
What's
native
this?
because DLSS is always compared to native with TAA applied.
Yeah.
Anything compared to the worst case scenario will appear improved.
Oh my god.
The so-called best TAA algorithms are needlessly expensive and brand specific.
Yeah.
First, I have a bone to pick with DLAA. DLAA uses too many pass frames for reconstruction, which causes two problems. Long ghosting trails and significant blurring in motion compared to native with SMA.
Do you want to know what's so bad about this? Is that I actually thought with a couple of these games that it was a design choice. It was a stylistic choice. I didn't realize it was just the fucking graphics rendering being shitty. Yeah,
stationary output. It also fails to smooth stair-stepping and motion compared to SMAA. Applying Circus Method with the newest DLL provides much better results, even though both examples are rendered at 1080p. But Circus Method isn't cheap. DLA at 1080p on a desktop 12GB 3060 costs 0.75 milliseconds. Circus Method bumps it up to 2.44 milliseconds. Image quality is far from poor, but its proprietary nature, cost, and Blue Moon AI mistakes makes it unreliable for the industry. XeSS 1.3 native AA mode suffers from the same problems as DLIA, but costs 1.44 milliseconds at 1080p on the same machine. Applying Circus Method gets image quality almost indistinguishable from Circus Method DLSS, but costs 4.6 milliseconds. Next is Unreal's TSR. It's a little more complex because it implements Circus Method natively, but I give it the fairest shot possible by using UE 5.4's more optimized implementation. It's easy.
Yeah, this is way worse. Like, you can't tell really with this image, but you can easily tell with this one. I just don't understand how it's so bad.
How can I be of
and they
service?
spend so much money on it.
It's easy to appear superior to Unreal's TAA, but TSR suffers from a specific hazy fizzle appearance that video compression doesn't present well enough to pair with my criticism of that aspect. But besides whether or not you think it looks fine or not, the biggest issue again is the cost when set by the maximum quality settings for anti-aliasing. It puts TSR 10 times the cost of TAA and stands around 3 milliseconds on a 3060 at native 1080p. That's the difference between 60 FPS and 50 FPS.
Jesus.
Still not convinced it's too expensive? Let's look at the Decima TAA again from 2017.
Wait, this is the way it looks? Oh my god.
How can I
These are
be of
PS4
Oh, wow.
timings. And they didn't go with SMA because of the cost combined with temporal reprojection, so they went with sharpened FXA fallback for their 2-frame TAA instead. But what if they use SMA instead? We would get 0.36 milliseconds versus both unreasonable TSR timings. With such a low base cost, and these results at 30 FPS, if we wanted to keep AAA cost under 1 millisecond on modern affordable hardware, we could catapult the quality even further with 60 FPS and use that 0.73 milliseconds of headroom with aspects such as SMA or advanced motion vectors. Meanwhile,
I don't understand why they keep focusing on trying to make this like hyper realistic when the game plays at 30. I feel like if your game has to play at 30 FPS, it's like real life isn't at 30 FPS. So at that point, like, what about that?
reporting in?
TSR was put under the same scenario on screen, I guarantee you it would look like its slime show even at 60 FPS.
Yeah.
These are TAA design requisites
Military
that must be
research
combined to keep TAA computations costs low and stop it from producing the poor image quality we've settled for more than a decade now.
Yeah.
But effect dependency is preventing progress.
Where do you need me?
Unreal has long been founded on this dependency, and still heavily does. UE5 is set to worsen this industry's problem because it's going to dominate the production of titles coming this generation, and Epic and its partners like CD Projekt Red have no concern over this matter.
Yeah, because CD
The Unreal
Projekt Red
documentation
is...
goes so far to claim that FXA results in a loss of fidelity compared to their temporal methods.
Yeah, they're
which you should
using
be
Unreal
aware by
now.
is only a half truth. They also
Because
provide
it's like, I think about these like up-res cyberpunk videos, and none of them look like
misleading
this.
information about TSR, presenting it as a method to achieve near 4K quality with just 1080p input. Of course, they showcase this with a stationary example.
Yeah.
In reality, 540p with sufficient temporal jitter and accumulation can resolve an 8K resolution image with a stationary camera. Out of context fairy tales like this are damaging game development.
Wow.
Another out of context narrative Epic Games is pushing is that Nanite
Has a faster way to render geometry and aims to eliminate the LOD pop-in association.
Can I be of service?
Nanite does not increase performance unless you abuse your scene with extreme overdraw. I've compiled many tests on the specific Unreal's forums thread that proves this. Nanite can cost as much as next-gen lighting, and pop-in will still remain a part of your gaming experience because shadows, skeletal meshes, foliage, and open-world partitions will still introduce pop.
And we know this from PAX Day,
Hold steady. We're going
because
in.
PAX Day had that same functionality.
Even Brian Karras has stated Nanite can have worse performance on optimized meshes, but stated users still enable it to save disk space. This comment is a perfect example
Oh my
showing Epic
God.
Games' flawed position on what modern games really need. It doesn't matter if your highly detailed open world game is 100 megabytes, but can't perform at a decent resolution and frame rate.
Yeah.
Optimized meshes don't even require nanite compression. But studios who use nanite save themselves money by not investing in quality LODs, and not investing in mesh introduction transitional effects that would give you better results. A good practice used on optimized game meshes is the use of bitmaps for subpixel detail.
Yeah, look at that.
A good practice.
You guys see this? Watch, it just literally appears out of nowhere.
A good practice used on optimized game meshes is the use of bitmaps for subpixel detail, such as the words on these quixel stones. Nanite encourages and is designed to render subpixel detail geometrically instead of textures, which causes extreme pixel crawl and artifacting, which you guessed it, can only be fixed by intense temporal frame smearing, creating a manufactured and limited scenario where flawed TAA appears as the better option. I understand the time and quality issues related to making good LDs, but nanite is the worst solution to this problem. UE5 will dominate all other options because this engine excels in support. I'm talking asset packages formatted specifically for Unreal, hundreds of documentations, shared public content, overwhelming logic support. Epic Games provides hundreds of free, basic, but high-quality assets when you use Unreal.
Holy shit.
Every major third-party vendor with game-related software always prioritizes support for Unreal.
I hate video games
Unreal
now.
offers a unique amount of support for critical tools for basic workflows like animation and debuggers. It's intuitive to use in comparison with competitor UI and programming designs. For studios, finding individuals to hire is made easy due to the widespread popularity and adoption of the engine. It's an advantage Unreal has acquired by simply existing as long as it has the way it has. That makes it the go-to for software and digital media. But the engine designs and its leadership should not be at the forefront of next-gen graphics development for critical reasons I'll outline right now. Epic provides 30 FPS presets in Unreal because they don't believe it's inadequate on 9th generation consoles. Look at Fortnite 5.4's performance. The design is CPU intensive, sure, but the art style is simplistic enough even with GI it should provide a computational advantage. Yet it's one of the hardest games to run on the GPU side, even with a 60 FPS or high preset enabled.
Oh my
if this is the best performance offered by the engine's creators, of course it'll defend 30 FPS when basic realism or complex stylized visuals come into play. Epic has no experience making realistic games.
That's actually true.
Matrix Awakens is not a game. It's a visually exciting 30 FPS demo with enough motion blur to hide the 30 FPS screen judder. Consumers who didn't own a 9th generation console at the time.
So he's saying that, like, we thought we were living in a 60 FPS world, but we were in a 30 FPS world all along, and we didn't even know it?
The future is ours, just as we foresaw.
Holy fuck, man.
I don't have all day.
Wake up.
Orders received. This should be a routine combat mission.
This is good, bro. I'm gonna be thinking about this for a while.
Saw the 60 FPS tag on the YouTube presentation and assumed that was the case. People who did experience the demo firsthand were given basic interaction through a locked aiming system that wouldn't expose the fluidity issues of 30 FPS. Epic has no problem abusing the flaws of their TAA or temporal upscalers such as DLSS for several effects I've shown throughout this video. Epic defaults their engine to rely on temporal smearing when very few TAA independent features remain undocumented and hidden behind loopholes most unsuspecting developers will never find.
I have no idea about any of this.
Heavy and blurry temporal upscaling as a viable solution on 9th generation consoles. And the biggest problem with Epic and their perspective on game development is that Fortnite drives their motivations for Unreal's development. Fortnite is a game with a very unique and uncommon problem the engine has to accommodate for. It's an open world map with a dynamic time of day and weather. This means real-time GPU calculations need to be computed per frame to account for those dynamic changes. What makes this calculation so much more expensive in Unreal is the fact that Fortnite's entire environment is destructible. This is why more realistic open worlds from 8th generation console titles have no problem with day or weather cycles even though they don't use light maps.
Yeah, it's like if I look at this game, there's none of that in that Metal Gear Solid.
I'll do my best. Yes, sir.
Use light maps.
Holy shit.
Because their environment, or in other words, primary source of indirect lighting, is mostly static. These games use lighting solutions that bait small, memory-efficient indirect lighting hints that your GPU doesn't have to compute. This way, your GPU just calculates how these pre-computed hints correlate to the dynamic lights and shadows.
Yeah.
How can I be
These
of
lighting
service?
systems have their own limitations, but not a whole lot that can't be accelerated or overcome using ninth-gen hardware.
And like, here's a good example of this. Have you guys ever walked inside of a room in Unreal and the room is super dark, and then in like a minute it becomes bright? I wonder if that's related to this.
Reporting in.
Potential. Fortnite's GI, which is Unreal's Lumen, can't let developers with the common environmental properties bake any high-quality indirect lighting hints that save you performance. Unreal's light maps are uninterpolatable and have serious leaking problems that can only be mitigated with stupid amounts of VRAM memory. So many Unreal games are wasting performance for basic visual standards because your GPU is computer whether or not a Fortnite wall has been destroyed or what that wall looked like, etc. Lumen is noisy without TAA because it isn't designed to use stable or high-quality indirect lighting hints. So top that inefficiency off in games with other Epic game technologies like Nanite, Virtual Shadow Maps, and TSR, and we're left with games created faster than ever and as inefficient and as terrible in motion as ever. When this happens over and over again, it standardizes, which is why other studios are following these inefficient designs for their mostly static games that could use faster systems.
And so I think that
How can I be of service?
I don't know what to say. Like, I think that the problem is that it creates... I think what he's trying to argue, I'm not sure because I don't really have like a background in this. I think what he's trying to argue is that the end result of this type of cost cutting is a worse product, even though for a lot of average users, they probably don't care.
Epic Games' indifference towards underperforming
He's saying
or poor
devs are
visuals
lazy?
that appear
Yeah.
in third-party Unreal games
I think.
is the statement that big-budget studios should be customizing Unreal source code to provide more appropriate designs for their titles. True, but it's almost a catch-22. If a studio decides to use Unreal, it shows they lack the funding, interest, and or innovation to manage the graphics themselves. This is exactly what happens when established studios throw out proprietary engines in favor of what Unreal offers.
Wait, what?
I have one more problem with Epic that I need to cover.
What?
Unreal is used for the automotive, film, simulation, and construction industries. That wouldn't be a problem if Epic wasn't constantly accounting for this user base and modeling Unreal with algorithms not meant for consumer-efficient real-time rendering.
That's
Amidst
true.
of these issues, I gave Epic the benefit of the doubt and made a feedback thread on the Unreal developer forums 12 months ago, requesting the prioritization of game development and a larger focus on temporal smearing independence within their various effects. In only 11 months, it was voted as the #1 feedback from developers, replacing the previous #1 feedback thread made 3 years ago. Epic released several Unreal versions, including nothing pertaining to the thread's request, despite a solid number of educated developers ready to progress beyond Epic's limited vision for this generation of gamers.
Jesus.
This studio was created to begin the production of an intense
Well, no,
action
people
game.
use Unreal for all kinds of things. Like for like architecture renderings and all kinds of other things too. Yeah, he rallied the devs. Yeah, this is
Based on a
insane.
new IP consisting over 700 pages of detailed story and scenarios. Our game is conventional due to only requiring a mostly static world with dynamic lights, making our goals much more relevant to many developers and gamers.
Yeah.
We have paused the production of our game, so our unrivaled passion for motion clarity and performance standards for untainted photorealism can be met, which is why our solution is to create a custom Unreal via crowdfunding, with custom systems that directly address the giant issues stated in this video. Don't think a custom Unreal engine will have an impact on developers? Take the finals for example. It performs so much better than other UE5 games. People defend Epic's UE5 and solely blame studios for any worse performing titles.
Yeah,
But the final's
I
extreme
do that.
destructive nature made using Nanite and the associated virtual shadow maps impossible. And
What?
most people don't know that the finals uses NVIDIA's custom UE5 branch to make use of its lower quality but much faster dynamic GI, DDGI, instead of Epic's Lumen. The finals performance doesn't contradict our views on Epic's Unreal. It only proves our point. NVIDIA's custom UE5 branch is exactly how we want to execute ours. But as of now, we need funding to motivate and hire skilled graphic programmers. Our
Holy
engine will always
shit.
be accessible for review and use under Epic's GitHub restrictions. Unlike industry leaders, we do not believe the future of graphics is dependent on blurry or expensive temporal smearing.
I feel like that's the case, yeah, because they do look so blurry.
That future is only possible
Holy
if
shit.
you care enough and support our vision for
There's
modern
exactly
graphics.
zero dumbing down in this video. Yeah, like, I'll be real. Like, as somebody who doesn't come from a design background, a lot of this stuff went over my head. Like, I can understand the visual differences, and I get, like, kind of what he's talking about, but a lot of it, I don't understand this, because I don't have a lot of, like, I don't have any background in this.
So sponsors, investors, we're ready to begin if we've convinced you.
Times of war
Threat Interactive, my studio, will be giving more details about how we intend to execute our plan in our next video. Until then, thank you for watching this one. And please like and subscribe to our channel, and share this message on your favorite Discord server, subreddit, and social media so we can
That's
start
what happened
elevating
with me.
the future of gaming standards together.
Holy fuck. I'll link you guys his video. I'll give him a sub and give him a like. Yeah, here, you can subscribe to him right now. W video, yeah. Glad you're putting light on this. I had no idea about any of this, man. Yeah, please share it.